Well, the biggest geopolitical story of 2025 has just gone down as China's government has introduced a new set of policies that are going to have widespread effects on the entire global economy. Starting now, any company anywhere in the world that uses Chinese rare earths to develop 14 nanometer or smaller semiconductors will now need a case-by-case approval from Beijing to get access to these materials. I can't tell you how massive of a shift this is, because this change in policy is going to affect every facet of the global economy. If you're the Dutch company, ASML, building the world's most advanced lithography machines in Europe, you now need Beijing's approval. If you are TSMC, building microchips in Taiwan, you now need Beijing's approval. Even if you are Intel or NVIDIA and operate in the United States, well, you get the picture. They will now be operating under Beijing's permission. Now, as you can imagine, the response from the US government was anything but positive. Here is a post from the US government's Select Committee on China, who states, "This move is an economic declaration of war. The Chinese Communist Party is weaponizing critical minerals to dominate global supply chains and undermine American industries." But is this actually true? Cambridge professor Jostein Hauge says the quiet part out loud in his post on X. Washington has long suffered from severe cognitive dissonance, struggling to accept that other countries take a page from its playbook. You see, this is not an economic declaration of war from China. This is simply China treating the United States in the exact same way the United States treats China. As Ryan Haas, senior fellow at the Center for Asia Policy Studies Institute, states, this is the new reality of US-China relations. China has spent the past several years building tools to reciprocate US actions and remind the US of its leverage. This action is consistent with PRC behavior all year. Hold firm, hit the US where it hurts, and leave the door open to negotiate. Think back to 2022, when Washington first introduced sweeping semiconductor export controls designed to cripple China's access to advanced chips. The US government blocked companies like ASML, NVIDIA, and TSMC from selling their most advanced products to Chinese firms. At the time, American officials claimed these restrictions were about national security, but in reality, they were a calculated effort to slow down China's technological rise. Beijing learned a critical lesson from that moment. The Chinese government could never leave themselves and their growing economy in a vulnerable position of being reliant on the United States. As former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger once famously stated, the United States has no permanent friends or enemies, only interests. And given the adversarial nature of the US and China relationship, it only makes sense that China would double down and develop their own domestic supply chain. At one point, Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, proudly stated, "We have a 3-year lead on China in AI." And in my mind, that is an eternity. But over the past 3 years, the Chinese semiconductor industry has been developing at an exponential pace, quickly erasing the United States' superior lead. One thing we must never do is bet against China, a nation filled with the world's largest amount of STEM graduates. If there is one thing the Chinese can do, it's figure out solutions to complex problems. Fast forward to today, and the eternal lead the former Google CEO once bragged about is completely gone. Just listen to Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, the world's most valuable company, reveal the truth about America's lead over China.
We're up against a formidable, innovative, hungry, fast-moving, under-regulated. Okay, people don't realize this. They are very lightly regulated. Some of the things I heard, they could never build AI chips. That just sounded insane. Two, that China can't manufacture. China can't manufacture? If there's one thing they could do is manufacture. Three, they're years behind us. Is it 2 years, 3 years? Come on, they're nanoseconds behind us.
Nanoseconds.
Yeah, they're nanoseconds behind us. And so we've got to go compete.
China is quickly closing the gap. This is now the reality of the situation. But what is happening right now is something we've never seen before in the US-China relationship. Beijing is beginning to fight back and hit the United States in the most vulnerable sectors of the US economy. Not long after this new economic policy was announced, Beijing doubled down and passed retaliatory port fees on US ships that will be docking at Chinese ports. Once again, US media is quick to portray this move as a provocative action from Beijing that hurts America's interests. But in reality, it was once again Donald Trump who first passed a port fee on all Chinese vessels docking in the United States. And honestly, it really is baffling to me how many people can't understand basic economics. as port fees will only increase costs for U.S. consumers, decrease profits for shippers, and result in a small decline in demand for exports to the United States. This article says the quiet part out loud. The Trump administration continues to underestimate China, and this needs to stop. There seems to be little consideration given to second and third order effects of policy choices. China can give as good as it gets and has demonstrated a willingness to take direct action. Have there been any lessons learned by the Americans over the past 6 months? It certainly doesn't seem so. Donald Trump started a trade war with every country in the world this April with his Liberation Day tariffs. But while the U.S. can bully countries like Canada and Mexico and boss the entire European Union by making their leaders sit around the Oval Office like schoolchildren getting lectured from their superior, China is the one country that has leverage like no other in the world. The trade war between the U.S. and China has just entered into its most intense phase yet. For 3 years, China watched as the U.S. government used export controls as a weapon, but now China is responding with the exact same playbook. Only this time, it's far more powerful. The simple reason for this is Washington's controls targeted a few select companies, but China's new rare earth policy targets the entire global supply chain. Rare earths are the foundation for everything, not just microchips, but EVs, renewable energy, defense systems, and AI infrastructure. You can replace a single chip supplier, which is exactly what Beijing has been doing for the past 3 years, but you can't replace the entire ecosystem of materials that make modern technology possible. Just take a look at this fascinating chart, which breaks it down perfectly. Since 1995, China has dominated rare earth metals global production. From 2000 to 2010, China was essentially the only real player doing the hard work of processing these materials. Since 2013, China has achieved an annual growth rate of nearly 10%, while China's supply of rare earths has ballooned to 353 kilotons of production at the end of last year. But here is why China's move is actually a well-thought-out and calculated one. Unlike Washington's chip bans, which were blunt and highly visible, Beijing's policy is subtle, legal, and almost impossible to challenge at the WTO. This is because Beijing doesn't block exports outright. It simply requires approval. That means that China can selectively tighten or relax access depending on who cooperates, rewarding friendly nations while putting pressure on adversaries. For the first time ever, Beijing isn't just reacting to sanctions, it's writing the new rules of the game. Now let's take a look at this graph, which details exactly which rare earths are being targeted in China's new export policy. Super hard materials like synthetic diamonds, which are essential in precision manufacturing, semiconductors, and defense optics. China will now block the export of rare earth equipment to block other nations' ability to replicate China's processing capacity abroad. Medium and heavy rare earths used in optics, lasers, sensors, and magnetics. Lithium batteries, which of course control the entire EV industry. Overseas rare earth items, which essentially gives China full control on how companies around the world use these rare earths. And finally, rare earth technologies, to prevent the transfer of process know-how and limiting other foreign countries from replicating what China has built. But now I'm going to bring this full circle and explain to you why Beijing's retaliation is so worrying for the U.S. economy. Take a look at this tweet from Dean Ball. He is a senior fellow at the Foundation for American Innovation and states, if enforced aggressively, this policy could mean lights out for the U.S. AI boom and likely lead to a recession, economic crisis in the U.S. in the short term. But here's the interesting thing. The U.S. economy is already in severe trouble. Trump refuses to address this and will only talk about the stock market, which has done well so far in 2025, with the S&P 500 up a solid 11% this year alone. But when you peel back the layers, you realize the stock market is completely disconnected from the actual American economy, as over 35% of the S&P 500's value is represented by the Magnificent Seven stocks. The poster child of this group is NVIDIA, whose shares have risen over 32% this year alone. Google is up 25% year-to-date, with Meta up 17% year-to-date. But what is driving these stocks in valuation? It's 100% the AI boom. But here is where the shock comes in. A Harvard's economic professor recently revealed that without AI data centers being built, GDP growth in the United States grew an abysmal 0.1% for the first half of 2025. The entire U.S. economy is being propped up by the AI industry, and this is why Trump and the U.S. government is panicking, because without the AI boom, the U.S. economy would be completely finished. But now I want to switch to the investing portion of today's video and share with you a recent article I read on the Wall Street Journal entitled, "A New Wall Street Trade is Powering Gold and Hitting Currencies." It explains how investors are piling into gold and other dollar alternatives like Bitcoin because they're losing confidence in traditional currencies. The piece called it the debasement trade, and it's not hard to see why. Inflation remains stubborn, government debt is ballooning, and even major central banks are moving away from the US dollar and buying record amounts of gold and Bitcoin. That tells you something big is changing. Investors are looking for assets that can't be printed. And while gold and Bitcoin have been leading this trend, another digital asset is quietly entering the same conversation, and it's Dogecoin. Now, before you laugh, this is not the same Dogecoin meme story you heard about years ago, because Dogecoin just went corporate. Meet House of Doge, the sponsor of today's video and the official commerce arm of the Dogecoin Foundation, and it just announced it's going public on the NASDAQ under the ticker symbol TBH. Now, this is huge because House of Doge isn't just about holding crypto. It's building the entire payments ecosystem that Dogecoin was originally designed for. Led by CEO Marco Marghiotto, a fintech executive who sold his last company to Fiserv for $270 million, House of Doge is forming partnerships with Robinhood, 21 Shares, and even has backing from Citadel, Pantera Capital, and Mosaic. This is huge because House of Doge isn't just about holding crypto. It's building the entire payments ecosystem that Dogecoin was originally designed for. Their mission is simple: turn Dogecoin into a true payments currency used by sports teams, universities, and major retailers, and create yield-producing products that finally give Dogecoin real-world utility. And here's where it gets even more interesting. The official Dogecoin treasury, managed by CleanCore Solutions, already holds more than 710 million Doge, worth tens of millions of dollars, all securely held through Bitstamp by Robinhood, ensuring full transparency and institutional-grade security. The treasury is chaired by Alex Spiro, Elon Musk's personal attorney, and its goal is to make Dogecoin a premier reserve asset, just like gold once was. Together, House of Doge and CleanCore are creating the infrastructure that bridges Dogecoin with mainstream finance. The first Dogecoin ETP in Europe already has 25 million AUM with a 71% year-to-date return, and a US ETF is expected to launch in November. This is the moment where meme meets Wall Street, but with serious leadership, credible partners, and real financial products. So if you've ever wondered how a community-driven token could evolve into a legitimate player in global payments, keep your eye on the ticker symbols TBH and ZONE. And as always, contact a financial planner before making any investments and do your own research. Now, to help you out, I'm going to include links to the investor presentation and company website down in the description below. Everyone, thank you for making it to this point of the video, and I hope you enjoyed today's extensive breakdown of the new phase of this US-China trade war. China has tremendous leverage with its control over rare earth minerals, and I truly hope the US and China can work out a trade deal that benefits both nations. Stay tuned for more updates on this situation. Thank you all for your incredible support, and I look forward to seeing you all in our next video soon.